So I had planned, of course, to begin today talking about the verdict in the Chauvin trial, a verdict that was reached by the jury hours after the President of the United States went on TV and publicly called for a guilty verdict, also shortly after the mayor of the city demanded a conviction, and only a day after one of the most prominent members of Congress flew from D.C. to Minneapolis to inflame the already violent mob. It was a verdict reached by a jury in the same city that had been devastated by riots last year because of this case, and where even worse riots would have happened had they returned anything but the verdict they did return. A verdict reached in a trial that could have been moved to a different city and could have involved the sequestering of the jury for the whole trial, but it wasn't and didn't. Even aside from the facts of the case, facts which very clearly amount to reasonable doubt on all charges, in my opinion, rather than a conviction on all charges, which is what the jury decided. But even aside from those facts, the public pressure, the location, the refusal by the judge to take any steps whatsoever to address any of these issues, all of that is enough to call this a fundamentally unfair and unjust trial, and one in which the verdict cannot be trusted. I mean, moving the trial's location and sequestering the jury, these are tools that a judge has in his toolbox. If this trial didn't call for those things, then what trial in history ever has? This is why this is a decision which should be appealed and retried, but it may never get that far because almost everyone in this country, especially in positions of leadership, including in the court system, is too afraid of the mob to do the right thing. There should have been a mistrial declared at various points along the way, but certainly when Maxine Waters showed up and did what she did, that should have been a mistrial. But courage is in short supply in this country. Though we've never needed it more, there's never been so little of it. But as I said, this is the topic that I was going to open the show with. We'll talk more about that later. That was until a new case, a new protest, a new BLM martyr was appointed, right as the guilty verdict in the Chauvin case was read. BLM protesters were descending on Columbus, Ohio, in response to a police shooting that had happened just hours earlier. Now, as we've seen over and over again, the narrative takes shape, solidifies, metastasizes like a cancerous tumor rapidly. I mean, within minutes, within seconds now. And this time, as almost always, the narrative was that the victim, 16-year-old Ma'Khia Bryant, was innocent, unarmed, helpless, not a threat to anyone, and had been gunned down randomly by police. Police showed up and just shot her dead. That's basically what we were told. Activists and media journalists, but I repeat myself, took the words of the supposed witnesses and the supposed victim's family and ran with it as gospel truth, as they always do. Before any other facts, here's the point we're at now. Before any other facts about this case had circulated, already this video clip of Ma'Khia Bryant's mother, now she was out in front of cameras right away, within minutes, within hours at least. And before we knew anything else, this was the clip making the rounds, and this is what established the narrative. Here's what Ma'Khia Bryant's mother said. Let's listen.
Ma'Khia was named after a male prophet in the Bible. She was a very loving, peaceful little girl. She was 16 years old. She was an honor roll student. And Ma'Khia had a motherly nature about her. She promoted peace. And that's something that I want to always be remembered.
Loving, motherly, and honor roll student, she promoted peace. That's what her mother says. Her mother, we should note, did not have legal custody of her daughter. Ma'Khia was in foster care. Even more important to note, the loving and peaceful Ma'Khia was actually shot by cops while in the process of trying to murder somebody with a knife. The same day as the shooting, only hours after the shooting happened, actually, Columbus police held a press conference, and usually it takes a couple of days, but now we're at a point now where they put the body cam footage out right away. Even that it's not quick enough. If you can't get it out within seconds, it's not going to be fast enough to get out in front of the narrative. So this is a few hours later, still not fast enough, but they showed the body cam footage and explained the context of the shooting, and let's watch that now.
71 Legion Lane. The information was that a caller said females were there trying to stab them and put their hands on them. Dispatchers tried to obtain information about weapons, but were unable to gather that information. Officers were dispatched at 4:36 and arrived at 4:44. We will play the first video in real time.
Hey! What's going on? Hey, what's going on? Hey! Get down! Get down! Get down!
There's the body cam footage. So the cops were called to the scene because someone was trying to stab somebody else. That's all they know. Police officer arrives, sees a woman wielding a large knife. Appears to be a butcher's knife or steak knife that you get from your kitchen. I mean, this is no pocket knife. This is a large knife. The suspect attacks one other woman and pushes her to the ground. And then she goes after someone else, the girl in pink in the body cam footage. Ma'Khia pins the girl in pink against the car, raises the knife, and is in the process of trying to stab her when the officer, given no other choice, from his perspective, opens fire. Ma'Khia was not unarmed. She had a knife. She was not peaceful, at least in that video. She was trying to stab someone. These details matter. At least they matter to those of us who are honest and rational, though our club is small and losing members by the day. The full facts of the case, as they've now been revealed, facts which absolutely, without any shadow of a doubt, vindicate the police officer and reveal him to be not just justified, but heroic, acting to save someone's life. But of course, that doesn't matter. None of it matters. Still, the cop is accused not just of murder, but of racist murder. This in spite of the fact that he was firing not even to defend himself, but to defend the life of another black girl. He shot a black girl to stop her from killing another black girl, and that makes him a homicidal racist? There's no reasoning with this thinking because there's no thinking involved. This is what the left needs to know. They need to know only two things, two data points. Did the police kill someone? And was that person black? If so, it was racism every time without exception. Now let's really consider the position this officer was in. He's called to the scene. He finds a black girl trying to gut another black girl with a butcher's knife. If he shoots, he's racist. If he doesn't shoot, and the other black girl gets stabbed and killed right in front of him, he'll be accused of not acting to save the life of that black child. So if he saves the black girl's life, then he's guilty of not valuing the assailant's life. If he doesn't save her life, he's guilty of not valuing the victim's life. And because they're both black, then no matter what he does, he's not valuing the life of one or the other of the black people involved. No matter what he does, he loses. No matter what he does. He's already condemned simply for arriving to the scene. The moment he is there wearing that badge, he's done. There's nothing he can do, no option he can avail himself of that would not lead to accusations of racism. Of course, you're always going to get the Monday morning quarterback. Why didn't he use a taser? When someone is in the process, they've got the knife like this, and they're in the process of trying to stab. A taser is by no means guaranteed to stop that from happening. You could shoot them with a taser, and they're still going to get that stab in. They could get multiple blows in. Certainly at least one. A knife that size, a blade that size, just one stab placed in the right place could very easily kill somebody. So if he had done that, if he had just pulled the taser out, tried to use a taser, and it wasn't enough, and the girl was stabbed to death, then what would the activists be saying? You know what they'd be saying? They'd be saying, oh, yeah, well, now you use a taser because it's not important enough to you to use lethal force to save this black child's life. That's what they would say. And we all know it. So there's no option. Except for one, perhaps. Here's the other option, if you're a cop. Don't take the call. You know, there was some static over the radio. You didn't hear it. Oops, these things happen. Go grab a coffee instead. Stay out of it. Let whatever's going to happen, happen. The other members of the community there, you see them in the video. There appear to be some adults there as well. they don't seem too concerned about these kids' lives anyway. They're just standing around watching, like a knife fight between teenagers is a spectator sport. So let the violence happen. Stay far away from it. If parents don't want to raise their children, if communities don't want to care for themselves, then let them reap what they sow. What we know for sure is that if the cops had done that, if Ma'Khia had simply been allowed to stab the other girl to death, and no cop was in the vicinity, then we'd never hear a word about it. BLM wouldn't care. You wouldn't have people in the media weeping and wailing, "Oh no, another black life taken, I'm so distraught." They wouldn't be saying any of that at all. They wouldn't say a damn word about it. There'd be no protest, no outrage, no mourning. Because there'd be no political or ideological benefit to any of that. The left needs the cops involved for that. So the real way for the police to avoid the lose-lose situation is to avoid the situation completely. And yet, they still respond to the call. They still show up to the scene. It turns out lots of cops really do care about protecting and serving. Even protecting and serving communities that wouldn't spit on them if they were on fire. In fact, they probably lit the fire. Now, cops aren't superhuman. They aren't superheroes. They aren't perfect. They aren't saints. Nobody is. But I can't imagine why any of them would still be on the job at this point if they didn't at least care about helping and protecting people. Why else would you be there now? What other motivation could you possibly have? Sadly for them, they're doing that job in a culture that doesn't care about justice and truth, doesn't care about the rule of law, doesn't care about human life, except when it can be used. As I talk about all the time, human life in this culture, all human life, black or white, is a commodity. It's something to be used. If you can't use it, then you just throw it away like it doesn't exist. We do that in the womb. We call it, in the womb, if a life is taken in the womb, we call it medical waste. Throw it in a medical waste dumpster out back of the abortion clinic. So life only has value when it can be used. And when it comes to black lives in the city, from the media's perspective and our culture's perspective, they have value after the life has already been taken, if it was taken in a circumstance that's politically advantageous to the cultural powers that be. That's the culture we live in. A culture governed not by mob rule. Okay, let's get that straight. This is not mob rule. This is a culture governed by the rule of leftist elites who use the mob to affect their ends. And that has made many things very difficult. To merely live as a normal and decent person, maintaining your decency and sanity amid the torrent, is at times a Herculean task for everybody. But to enforce the law in this culture, in this environment, with your life and the lives of others on the line, that is now almost impossible. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right down there so you can stay up to date on all of our future content.